It continues with our guests Odoyo Widi, Chair of the Lake Victoria South Waterworks Development Agency, and Public Policy Analyst Arnold MALIBA. And we want to open the phone lines 0719-012-600 CT. Remind us the day's proverb.
Yes. Chinua Achebe and the proverbs found in his book Things Fall Apart. Proverbs are the palm oil with which words are eaten.
Proverbs are the palm oil with which words are eaten.
Every community, when a point needs to be made in a way that members of that community would not just internalize it, but something that they would actually take in as their own, a proverb will be used. And it will be used in the language that that community speaks in, just so that it is clearly understood. One proverb, 1,000 meanings.
And deep.
Profound.
Softening for consumption.
Yes.
That's a good one. That's a good one. So before we went to the top of the hour and the news, Ndu had asked the question. So yeah, we are saying no protests. What else can be used? Arnold, you said Parliament is one avenue in which we have elected leaders who are in Parliament, in the National Assembly, in the Senate, in the county assemblies, the representatives of the people. One of the jobs that they have is representation. The second is legislation, and they have powers to do that, and then oversighting the government. So if there are all these issues, then that is you call it what? This giant public square.
I call it a village square.
The village square,
Yeah.
where these matters can be canvassed and discussed and brought to the fore. And what other avenues do people have?
You know, we need to put our issues on the table. And look at what we have established over the years for solving our problems. When you talk about President William Ruto talking with Raila Odinga, yet these are people who have their parties and coalitions, who have their members in the National Assembly, in the Senate. Why don't they debate these issues there? If it is something to be brought in by way of law, why don't they do it? And we have statute books. There is enough law there. Enough, more than, in fact, Kenya is over-legislated. Why do we go to the streets?
Mheshimiwa.
Yes, sir.
What you say and what Arnold was saying is actually true.
Absolutely.
It is true that we have legislators, we have all these things. But let me introduce the word that I introduced earlier, truth. Our parliament does wonderful things from time to time and even surprise you. Others, they don't, especially when they're looking after their own interest. But one thing that is also a certainty as we look at all the good and the bad, our parliament is compromised.
By who and what?
It is completely compromised. First of all, by their own self-interest. So the very function for which they were elected, one hardly ever sees it. And when one does, it's like a mirage and then it is gone. That's number one. Number two, when you talk about the need for looking at history and what we've seen and what works, part of the things that have worked in this country for the longest time.
You ask a question in so many words. Ask a question and I give you an answer. You have a whole book.
If you are asking the question, then if you are asking the
Simplify
question,
the question.
Yes, make it easy and quick.
No, I am not going to make it easier or quick. And stop being impatient. Pay attention and listen.
Okay, I'm listening to you.
Okay?
Yes.
I am saying this.
Yes.
If you look at our history, the methods that have worked from independence, whether it was Kadu and Kanu, was this conversation that you're talking about. And was it in Parliament? How did Kadu fold and join Kanu? How did Raila join Kanu? How multi-party? How did Kibaki and Raila? All these things. These are a series and a history of handshakes. Was Parliament involved, or were the top leaders involved in having a discussion among them and then pulling their people? That's our history.
Are we talking about solving the public issues or solving the political issues of the two sets of leaders?
The leaders that we've had
when Tractor was entering the Jogo's stomach,
yes,
was it addressing cost of living? Was it addressing rising fuel prices? Was it addressing the issues of the day? Or was it addressing the politics of the day in terms of...
It was addressing the politics of the day, because the politics of the day is what affects the lives of the people.
Actually, before we went to a break...
Where did his question end? Because I need to answer it. Stop there. Where did the question end?
Well, before...
Because you should be sitting this side, because You are not asking a question, you are contributing. I want you to ask me a question.
I'm actually not, I don't intend to ask you a question. I intend to give you a scenario.
Okay.
It's called a psychological background from which you can look at this thing, because you made a statement and I am making a counter statement, and I'm saying, yes, everything you're saying is true, but there is also this.
Yeah, but you see, there can be nothing more compromised than the street protest, which is 101% Azimio. So we can't use a more compromised team to solve problems that would have been solved with a less compromised team.
You know, I think the thing that we are not doing here is answering a very simple question about, we keep we are shining the light on something that, you know, we've said, all right, maybe it's not the best solution. We are failing to talk about what is a solution if we are making a suggestion.
Okay.
And failing miserably so.
Let me give
Because
you
here we are saying the way in which maybe 1 million people want to go is not the right way. But we also have to understand that a lot of people are being shepherded into a particular way. And we are not giving an alternative. We are not giving an alternative, and we are failing.
I think there's an alternative.
What is it?
That we also don't want to look at and do not consider it as an alternative.
Can I say something here? Sorry, Arnold, because it could also contribute to what you want to say here. And we've talked about that at the beginning of this year, and I said something. I said, you know what? It's about time that a governance structure that calls on its people to participate, especially via the vote, then must look at participatory governance. You must then say, these people who are representative of the country in the name of Parliament, what are you asking them to do? A lawmaking body, which then says, this is how you spend money. This is how you will run the country, essentially. But we don't find that we are participating in pushing them to actually do their job.
True. And you almost preempted part of what I was going to say. Number one, would you consider giving government a chance, a new government that is simply setting its structures in place? Would you consider giving it a chance as an option? That's an open question. Because for anyone who's been in government for 6 months, if we really understand how government works, 6 months is so short a time that you cannot change the things we are talking about in one go. We've not even had one harvest.
Absolutely.
Secondly, are we looking at devolution as an option? Governors down there are doing miracles. Governors have been giving out cheaper, subsidized fertilizer. No one is talking about that as a way of bringing down the cost of living, because we will be going into a harvest in the next 5 months or so. Devolution is working on the other end. So I wanted to go around and ask this, that if we are going the mass action way, we are talking about people taking back their own power and exercising it directly. And this particular process is being led by people who the Constitution says we've delegated power to. So essentially, if people are taking back their power, that particular process should not be led by people who are elected like members of parliament we are seeing on podiums, because already it's a vote of no confidence in what they should be doing. So when you see a member of parliament who should be doing this thing and speaking on behalf of the people in the assembly, saying that now the people are taking their power, he should step down. He shouldn't be there.
It should begin by him saying, but I have failed and this is
I have failed, therefore you people take over that. County assemblies are out there. We are also not giving that particular end a focus. And that brings me to the 1882 question. That we had got 1,882 positions falling vacant last year on 9th of August. That of all those, only 2 had a problem. That we elected parliament. Let's start with MCAs. 1,450 of them. There was no problem. Those who had issues have chosen court. And court is also another option. That if we feel we are aggrieved as a nation, we can go to court. And we've got all manner of courts to go to. Have we done that? If it's about the election, for example, Azimio went to court. First of all, they presented themselves to IBC. IBC made to the people. People made a decision through IBC. Of course, IBC just marked the results, put it out there. They went to court. The court made a verdict. They have not accepted that. So, the court bit of it, we have got this, but we need to ask a question. Really, out of 1,882, only the presidential election was stolen. That we can actually have a parliament that sits and is legitimate enough. And premised on that, for example, we have elected Yala, something that people don't want to talk about. Kalonzo Musyoka's son has actually become a member of parliament of Yala from a parliament that was elected in an election that Kalonzo is saying was stolen, and his son is legitimately sitting at Yala. Raila Odinga's last born is sitting at Yala through a parliamentary process, from a parliament that came through a process, an electoral process, that Raila Odinga says was stolen. Isn't it time we also had a honest conversation as a people? And that is where now then we bring in, we shepherd people and bring in. She spoke about a participatory process. That is exactly what the Constitution 2010 does. That we elect, we remain part and parcel of these processes. If you ask those people who are going to the streets, ask them if they've been part and parcel of coming up with the CIDPs. Adverts have been everywhere. That is part and parcel of actually ensuring that some of those problems are sorted. We are coming up with ADPs. Have they been part and parcel of that? You cannot be showing up for protests, and when an advert comes out for a memorandum to submit and talk, and people are meeting in villages, and by the way, it's out there every single day. I am in so many WhatsApp groups. You don't show up for those coming up for a CIDP, a process that will actually solve the problems that we're talking about by use of devolution, but you want to exercise power by going to the streets. All of us went to vote the other day. What has changed 6 months since we went to elections? How all of a sudden is it that the people we would kill for now don't make sense? It's also just an important time for us to have a honest conversation as a people. But I was saying something before you went to a break, and you allow me to say that I'd like on Monday, Raila and Martha to answer 3 things. First of all, to give us a scorecard of the handshake. At least as the surviving people who are still active in politics and they were part and parcel of the handshake, they should give us a scorecard so that we can compare the handshake work and what this new administration is trying to do, and probably give them a hearing. Number 2, there are issues that have always occurred during elections. We have lost lives of people. Our homesteads in so many places are dotted with unmarked graves of young men and women who during conflicts originating from elections were killed. For 4 years, Raila Odinga was part and parcel of a handshake. Did he, for example, do anything about Baby Pendo? Did he do anything about Baby Mutinda? The Musando issue was so thorny before the handshake. Immediately he got in, he kept quiet. Bringing us together on Monday to start a process that could bring up new Baby Pendos, new Baby Mutindas, and new Musandos is not a fair one before he tells us exactly where, when he had 4 years, how difficult was it, for example, to do justice to that? And finally, he needs to tell us the end. He's telling us he's defending the Constitution, and you are telling us to go to the street so that then we can march to State House, something that is outside the law. So it cannot be an oxymoron. He must give us an end. What is the goal, the end goal to this mass action? Because if it ends the way we have seen, because again, we will not run out of history. In 1997, we had NDP, a tractor being swallowed up by a Jogo. In 2008, I know we said everybody can believe whatever. In 2007, that is the first time I ever voted. I became of age and went to vote very early. I was hardly 19, went and voted, and I voted for Baba. I have voted for Baba all my adult life. Forget the public sentiment. I voted for him all my adult life. He won in 2007. He did not defend that. How did it end up? We ended up with a handshake. 2013, the noises. 2017, we were here. It ended up into a handshake. So if history is anything, he also needs to tell us if we don't need to waste time to go out there, people die for him, and then we end up in another handshake, and then you end up him. All of a sudden, Baba amekuwa bubu. Hakuzungumzia kama kwa handshake, hakuzungumzia mambo ya Baby Pendo. It's just come up the other day when they said they were going to court. But for 4 years, there was nothing. Yet when he was mobilizing us to go to the streets, those were issues to be spoken about. So I like him on Monday to address that and also tell us, as he gives the scorecard, what has changed between last year and now, so that you don't just carry people along. But I have no problem with Baba. Baba is only relevant because the younger generation, me, you, and the others who are in this particular space, have refused to stand up. Not young. You are not young.
He is in the younger generation.
You are not older than Baba.
There's a measure.
Anyway, there are things that we need to let the public know. We are going to talk about not only the problems, but the cause of the problems we find ourselves in now. This so-called cost of living is seasonal. It will come and it will go. Since the election, we have not had any rains. There is no harvest at all. And you are like a baby crying for food when you are seeing the container is empty. Let us be fair. Let us be honest. This idea of the cost of hunger started when Baba was right there seated. He did nothing about it. So to take us to the streets for the cost of hunger is to take us for I don't know what. Then you hear a whole minority leader is telling us that we should not give his people relief food because they are okay, they can't eat beans. Then he is here on the streets talking about hunger. We hear a whole party leader telling us that his people should not go to State House, should not seek government jobs, should not even meet government ministers. Then he goes to tell his people, this government is very bad. The jobs are only given to 2 communities. Why do we speak from both sides of the mouth? And then we come here and we start saying we should not talk about so and so. It's the cause of all problems in Kenya relating to violence. I am telling you today, you will remember me 10, 20 years later. After Raila Odinga will no longer be in the political scene, we will not even be going to court after presidential elections.
So we have to ask you something.
I will answer you.
If you make a statement and say that Raila Odinga is the cause of all violence in Kenya.
Yes, national violence.
Is that really a statement of truth?
It is truth. Tell me who else does it.
In the time that President Moi was president, are you saying that the violence that was meted on people who were seeking multipartyism, that Raila was the one who was behind all that?
Was Raila there? Was Raila behind it?
Raila was there. Raila was alive. Raila was among the people who was protesting.
Yes. There are many other ways he could have used to achieve that. Nevertheless, he achieved it through street protests.
Yes.
Because that is the only thing he knows. But after he has achieved it, my brother, we now have the best constitution around Africa. We have good laws in place. We have an independent electoral boundaries commission. What is all this?
It's like
that very independent electoral boundaries commission that was headed by an ODM politician. Chebukati even vied in ODM. Isaac Hassan vied in ODM. These were Raila's candidates. After he has lost, they are bad people. The IEBC needs reforms.
Okay.
Yes. This is the same person we keep on protecting.
It's not protecting him. I'm merely raising an issue. When you make a statement, a blanket statement of that sort,
I will stand by it.
But it is not true. It is like saying that the Mau Mau were the ones who were responsible for the violence that we saw when people were fighting for independence. Were they?
But
how were Africa? Thank you.
Partly.
How were the Africans treated? In the period leading to 1997 and multipartyism, was Raila the only voice that was in the opposition? Was even the most prominent voice?
By the way, it wasn't much there because Raila came after Moi had repealed Section 2A. He returned here after it had been repealed. But let me tell you, there are times when that was necessary, but not now.
Oh, so now there was a time when it's necessary?
It was necessary. There's a time it was necessary because...
Who decides when it's necessary?
What were we looking for? We were looking for Section 2A to be repealed. A very clear-cut need. But today, what is the need? What is the need? We already have an independent electoral boundaries commission. We already have the best constitution we wanted that was actually fronted by Raila Odinga himself. He campaigned for it around the country. When this constitution has produced a precedent, he has even gone to court and you have been told, Bwana, hauna evidence, hii yako ni hot air. He's taking us to the streets. For something on the 26th of November, he said he will accept the results of both the Supreme Court.
Actually, he said he will not cause trouble.
He will not cause trouble. And this is not trouble. And let me tell you, what we are doing today by asking our people all to come from Mombasa, Kisumu, Migori, and everywhere to go to the streets is like building a dam with soil like the one in Nakuru. When it gets full, you will not stop it. I can tell you. These people we are bringing to the street, we will not control them.
There's always a counter-argument to that.
Yes.
And there are those who will say that the protests were peaceful, but the government instigated the violence.
They will say that as propaganda.
My point, remember the earlier point about truth that
and if the government keeps off, they will say the government left us our business to be destroyed, our people to be assaulted, our cars to be stoned. So, somebody at that age has seen everything, had it, and know it, and expect it, and is experienced to know. Whenever you bring a large crowd in the streets, whose register you don't have, expect violence. Yesterday in Kisumu, just a handful caused enough violence and damage. Please, let us not bring uncontrolled crowds in the streets.
Let's open the phone lines, 0719-012-600. I know you want to say, on a light note, but there are two callers on the line. Let's hear from them.
Okay.
Mwalimu Irongo Emos in Kisii, good morning.
Good morning, how are you?
Very well, thanks. How are you? Mwalimu.
Good morning, Eric.
Good morning.
Yes, allow me to make a short contribution.
Please do.
I only want to tell the two guys in the studio, I like their eloquence. Unfortunately, I do not appreciate the fact that they are drawing every part of this conversation to Raila Odinga. Kenya has problems, and these problems must be solved. It is wrong for them to say that Raila is always the cause of violence, that Raila knows nothing else except mass action and violence. No. Raila has been an MP in this country. Raila has been one of the prime ministers. In fact, we have only had two, and has done good work. Instead of them condemning what we are about to see on Monday, they should be telling us what criterion they have used to determine that on Monday we are going to have violence. In fact, so that I can allow the other callers to continue, let them be rational. Let them be rational. It's wrong.
Sawa. Thank you, Mwalimu. Sami in Magarini, good morning.
Yes, good morning, guys.
Good morning.
Yes, this is Sami, and I would like to congratulate the two fellows, having said that actually the demonstration is 100% Azimio, because in the first place, they started by questioning the legitimacy of the current president and also the servers and whatever. If they had started with the issues of UNGA or the cost of living, then they would have a lot. They would have a lot of people following behind them. But since they started in the wrong foot, even myself, I know we are feeling it hard actually on the side of life. But I appreciate the step they are taking. Thank you.
Asante Sami. Elijah in Nairobi, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Very well, thanks, Elijah.
I think the gentleman misspoke, and I thank CT Muga for pointing it out. You can't accuse Raila of being a sycophant of violence or a person who only uses violence, and then when it's pointed out that there were times that this was utilized, you say, okay, at that time it was necessary. There are tools of people in alleged democracies when the democracy doesn't work. Demonstration is one of them. So to try and vilify the man for what he's trying to do, I think it's a waste of time on my part, but I respect his ability to do it. And also it is important to realize that if things were going well, he would go and call this rally and no one would show up. If people are so passionate about what government is doing to make things right, let government make things right.
All right.
If things are wrong, you create a situation where people don't have an alternative. So for the person struggling with cost of living, who will raise their voice? It's not the government. It's not their cronies.
Is it
Raila is such
his elected leader?
It should be his elected leader, but is the elected leader doing it?
The elected
and
leader
what is happening here is there is a vacuum. Exactly. And Raila fills the vacuum. Now, you can sit and cry about Raila, but that's a straw man argument. Fix the problems. Don't point and say that is the problem. The problem is not Raila. The problem is a failing economy. And as long as government doesn't fix that, even if Raila is not there today, someone else will get up and they will lay hold of that.
Thank you, Elijah. We'll pick up more calls after we take this break. 0719-012-600. Mass protests scheduled for Monday. What are your views on it? Is it the right tool to use? Is it the right time to use that tool? We want to hear from you. 0719-012-600.
This is The Situation Room the only way to start your day.
All right, the conversation continues. We want to hear from you. 0719-012-600. Many people calling and many people wanting to say something. Let me pick this one. Amani. Amani, good morning.
Good morning, Eric. Good morning, Du. Good morning, CT. And the two gentlemen in house.
Good morning.
Now, just yeah.
Go ahead, Amani.
Okay. I think in this particular case of the Mandomanos, I think they're basically incoherent, and Raila doesn't have the moral authority to speak as he's doing, simply because, as these other gentlemen have pointed out, there are many other ways of sorting out this issue. Instead of rushing to State House, causing an insurrection, grabbing power by force. This is not what the Constitution envisaged at all, under any circumstances. And in terms of the Bill of Rights, the social rights and the economic rights of Kenyans, the Constitution in Article, I think it's 44-43, actually insists that rights can be enforced through the court system, and anybody can take up those rights and take them to court. Raila's team has got enough lawyers, constitutional lawyers included, who could take all these social issues to court and insist on the right being enforced. If they're talking about food, there's a right for freedom from hunger. The Constitution gives that to Kenyans. Education, etc., etc. So if they were really genuine, they would actually just go to court and insist on this and put in all the evidence showing that the government's not doing enough. Can the government do A, B, C, D? And things will certainly work for Kenyans in terms of a better lifestyle, an affordable lifestyle. But this is not happening. And it's not happening because that's not what Raila is all about. Raila is basically focused on grabbing power by force. And this is by insurrection. Because there's no way you can march to the State House and call it anything else. It's a coup d'etat. It's as simple as that. And therefore, as far as I'm concerned, the government of Kenya must use every force necessary to contain Raila Odinga and his team. They have no moral right to do what they want to do on the 20th, marching to State House and causing mayhem. This is going to cause mayhem. There's no otherwise. There is no other way of looking at it, because this is using force to get your way, to grab power.
Okay.
By any means whatsoever. Thank you.
Amani.
That's my contribution.
Thank you very much. Frederick in Katani, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning. And the lady.
Oh, thank you. I've been hearing the discussion.
Yep.
The discussion is very good. But our visitors there, I can say what they are trying to say, or what they are saying is okay. But there are some areas I'm not concurring with them.
Which ones?
You know, Raila exhausted. When he lost, first of all, he presented himself to IBC. IBC did their part. Then they were not contented. They went to court. The court did their part. But on the other side, he's seeing that he's not contented with the verdict of the court. That's why he's trying to go the other way by strictly sticking to the Constitution. So the visitors there, they are over-pointing at Raila Odinga, but being that I'm not Odinga supporter so much, but what is biting Kenyans now is the cost of living. I think when you follow the rallies he has been attending, the key topic there is the cost of living.
The cost of living. So do you agree that protests are the way to go?
Protests are, okay, there are so many ways to pursue justice. So he has tried to exhaust all the ways. The protest is the right way to go because there's no way it can be understood now. And also, what I'm saying, marching to State House is not the solution. State House you cannot access. I know it very well. Hawezi fika State House pale. But the protest is the best way to go. But hiyo plan yake ya kwenda State House now, I don't agree with this.
Unataka wafika wapi?
Okay, they should stage a peaceful protest. But they should not go to State House because accessing State House is very dangerous.
Okay.
because when I was a student, I was told there are some areas where the freedom of movement is limited. One of them, government building some state house. Yeah, I was told something like that.
So, Frederick, thank you. We hear
from
you.
my end, I know that it cannot be accessed. Thank you.
Asante. Asante. George in Kisumu.
Yeah, good morning, guys.
Good morning.
George.
Yeah, I'm doing fine. Kisumu is fine. I'm happy with the discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I have a contribution here I really want to make. Number one, yes, Mwalimu Dowidi said very well that actually Raila has been the cause of violence right from history. And of course, from the look of things, the historical fact is we know what really happened 2007. There was violence, and no one can actually deny that. And if you can remember, His Excellency Dr. William Ruto was one of the team, the powerful team of ODM, which won the election during that time. But you remember, Raila actually slowed down his temper and he actually embraced dialogue, and we had a government of a grand coalition. And criticized that step of the movement of Raila to actually accept negotiations.
George, sorry, something wrong with your line suddenly. Thomas Etiang in Nairobi.
Hi, morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
First thing, State House won't work. That's an insurrection. Having dispensed with that, civil disobedience and mass protest, that is in order. Third thing, and this addresses the two gentlemen. There is a concept called confirmation bias. Basically, that's what those two gentlemen are doing, looking for a set of facts that pretty much support their worldview. It's usually unfortunate. We see that with most of what's going on. Because you see, last year when we were debating the cost of living, it was Uhuru Kenyatta's fault. Him and nobody else. But now, what we are saying is that no.
It is not Ruto's fault.
It's not Ruto's fault. He found things like this, the rain, the Ukraine, and many other things. Again, what's good for the goose has to be good for Uganda as well. So let's not stop. Let's stop this bad behavior. We're trying to sanitize things that we evidently know how they are. Now, the history of what we call Raila and the form of protests he's been carrying out, we pretty much know the kind of gains that has led us to. And by saying that we should focus on parliament, these are politicians and pretty much they serve their own particular interest. If you talk about them representing any particular coalition, the first thing that happened when Ruto came to power is that the opposition was pretty much, if we could call it that, it was cannibalized. So we don't have anything that anyone can speak about in terms of majority or a minority coalition.
So
I think
points made, Thomas. Thank you. Let's hear from others as well. Thank you. Zachary, good morning.
Oh, good morning. Good morning, people.
Good morning.
Good morning, person. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. I told you that I'll be this like the Pope does, home minute, yeah? But I'm always with you. But when there is a very candid or topical contribution, like now I have a situation call, yeah?
Okay.
And I hope everyone is okay.
We are fine.
We are well, thank you, Zachary.
Thank you. Let's see, I can hear from me. And then me, I'll tell you that I'm just a common in the street, yeah? The least thing that we expect is any disturbance. Like, especially now that there is rain. There's rain. Everyone is concerned about planting we are rising from the ashes. Yeah. Raila was asked by his own people, and that clip went out. Raila, okay, we love you and we want you. And somebody was very, 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 very poem about him, yeah? And we respect him.
Zachary, something wrong about this phone that you're using today.
Can you hear me now?
Other one. Use the other one.
Okay. Okay.
Call with the other one. Zachary has many phones.
Yes.
Jackson in Westlands.
Hi.
Good morning.
Hi, good morning, team. How are you?
Very well.
Fine, thank you, Jackson.
The biggest problem we have in Kenya are people like the Widdies, opportunists who are like always trying to thrive in a corrupt kind of environment.
How is that now?
People who are living in a comfort zone, not knowing that the people that they represent, if he was a very good guy, why was he not elected in Kabondo Kasipul?
Does that mean because you're not elected, you're a bad guy?
Surely.
Of course, yeah.
No,
if you are demonizing Raila, being a bad guy was not elected, Owidi should serve as an example.
But surely, the number of people who are not elected in this country are always more than the people who are elected.
Raila
so are you saying
included.
all these people? Yes, exactly.
Even Raila wasn't elected, right?
Yes, so all these people, are you saying that they're actually bad people?
Not really. That's your word. Huh? Not really. What I'm saying, we are having a lot of guys who are so learned, but in a very good comfort zone, who are always like fearing demons will like kind of unravel our comfort zone. But these guys are just looking for the betterment of the whole Oipolo.
Okay, and what is wrong if somebody is looking after his own interests?
Oh, so one interest against the 8 million interest?
No. That's a completely different discussion. It is you who brought in the discussion of Mheshimiwa Owidi, and you said he's looking after his interests, and I'm asking what is wrong with him looking after his own interest?
You see, that's the problem now.
Where's the problem? Oh, we've lost him.
He quickly exited from the Republic of Peace and entered the space of violence. And he couldn't sustain the fire.
He thinks when Muga puts me on the hotspot, he will be spared.
All right, so gentlemen and lady, so we're heading towards Monday, okay? What you two have been saying is this is not the right way to go. And you've both been saying there are other ways in which this should happen. I want to go back to that original question.
Yes.
There are those clergy leaders, national leaders, county leaders, including Governor Sakaja, who've said, how about we lock these two gentlemen up in a room and let them have a conversation? Because it appears that all they need is that moment of conversation to validate one another, if that's what is required. And then they come out.
I think that is... we are sowing a seed for whose fruits we are not willing to reap. That is anarchy. It cannot be that millions of Kenyans queue to register as voters, queue to vote, endure those bad campaigns that we go through, and after they have done their decision, the fate of the nation is decided in a boardroom. We are not a democracy if that is the way we are going to be doing things. That is not democracy. What Azimio should do is that they should whip their members of parliament and tell them to go and cause problems in parliament until the problems they want solved taken care of. They are not doing that. What Azimio should be doing is that they should be telling their governors to ensure that their counties are doing well. By the way, this Azimio bit of it, sometimes, I heard somebody saying that people are opportunists and everything else. As in, what is wrong with being opportunist? He also used an opportunity to call here. He should be doing something else if that wasn't seizing an opportunity. For example, if Azimio really wants to help us, there are very many layers of working out. So, if we are going to say that Raila and William Ruto have to meet and talk, we already spoke as Kenyans on 9th August. The decision we did was validated by the Supreme Court. So what more conversation should be had away from the frameworks established by the Constitution? And we voted for it. 67% of us voted for this particular Constitution. So what conversation? And you talk about religious people bringing these people together. I can tell you 100%. Raila is doing what he's doing simply because he can do. This is impunity. This is anarchy. He's not.
Are you also of the opinion that he doesn't really want to have power? He doesn't want to rule the nation.
He has told us that
he doesn't want to govern.
He has told us that he has told Kindiki and the rest of us, ambieni watu hawatujui. You know, that is a mischievous boy. You know, in all of us men, there is always that cheeky boy that never left. I don't know about women, I can only speak about men. So there's a cheeky boy in Raila Odinga that has not left. And he has warned us enough times, Hamutujui. He's doing a lot of these things simply because he can. Because he can mobilize the masses. Because he can actually cause problems. But saying that the two of them sit together, and the worst thing is that we had a conversation behind, of course, and we were talking about the possibility that there probably has already occurred. People have already spoken. And therefore, these noises, the DP speaking the way he's speaking, Raila Odinga doing whatever he's doing is just a way to justify conversations that people have had behind closed doors. If that really is the case, then I think this country really needs liberation from itself.
For me, I don't see a dispute that if they sit down, they will solve. The cost of living, I think in about a year to 18 months, we will be going back to where we belong. Because I watch the cost of, say, fuel across. It's no different from Kenya. In issues of food, there's still drought. In fact, it just began to rain last night, according to me, though I've known some areas, it's been raining. Sooner or later, we will be harvesting, right? And we will have food. What is this that we must go to the streets? Where will the food come from if we went to the streets? The other day, I even heard there is shortage of grain throughout the world. So why are we in the streets in these issues of food? And in any case, those people we are taking to the streets, their biggest problem is just food. At a year mafuta, they can walk to where they are going.
You know, perhaps a conversation then will have those two leaders sitting and sharing ideas. Okay? So Raila is of the opinion that an unga subsidy would work. They can sit there and argue. Ruto can come up with his figures, Raila can come up with his figures, and they say, okay, so sawa.
Sweet spot.
They can come out and Raila can say, Nimekubali, I have been explained to, I've been convinced, subsidy of unga not good, subsidy of fertilizer best. He can come out like that. And then now he'll not have any conversation to go.
You know the dishonest thing about this subsidy thing? This unga issue did not begin with President William Ruto. It began with Uhuru Kenyatta. And if Raila was having an idea that could sort this mess, Uhuru Kenyatta was more accessible to him.
He did, and he came up with a subsidy. 10 billion.
That subsidy lasted how many days?
28.
So it can't work. And when Ruto inherits the can't work subsidy.
Actually, why do we say it can't work? Just because it has not worked for two presidents, it means it can't work for those two presidents. It doesn't mean it can't work.
No, if it could work, it would work in Ethiopia, it would work in Somalia, it would work in Sudan, it would work in Malawi. It can't work because you can't take money from the people in form of tax, then you give it to them in form of food. Then what about the rest of the operations of the nation? Even if 50 million Kenyans, they all eat ugali. I say one eats a bucket every 4 days. Yeah? And give it a subsidy of 100 bob. So that
one bucket every 4 days.
Bucket.
No, one packet.
Oh, yes. Packet, sorry.
Every 4 days. Multiply that.
That arithmetic is wrong.
Get,
it can't work.
Yes, it can't work. It will take too much money.
It's the packet which can't work.
How much? Okay, take a week with it.
I also do not think
he wants a day, man.
Yes.
Okay, take a month with it.
One packet 1 day, and even that one won't work. But nonetheless,
okay, whatever it will work.
Yes.
Multiply that with the amount of subsidy you want the government to put in each packet, the number of Kenyans, and then you see how much money it is, and see what we really collect.
Mr. Widi, you have a very valid point.
Yes, I do.
That one, you've jumped on that one quickly. Wow. Like, let's grab this gain while we have it.
Opportunist.
I do.
Yeah, you see, it is true.
Yes.
The issue of subsidy arises from a simple fact that we seem to be unable to feed ourselves. That's why the discussion is what it is. So the discussion probably ought to be, how do we get to feed ourselves? Because when you give the example of Uganda, Uganda can feed itself. That is one of the reasons. You have cows in Western Uganda eating bananas, okay? So it's a completely different setup. But the point you make up to that particular, yes, Mr. Widi, you have a valid point.
Let me add you one more sentence before you cut in. Yes. If we had enough money to pay taxes and then use that tax to subsidize our food, then we are rich enough, we can as well buy the food. Because the taxes generally in this country, for those who miss food, they only pay taxes when they buy very luxurious things.
Actually, no. No. Indirect tax hits everybody.
Yes, but it depends on what you spend. It hits you because you spend. If you don't spend, you will not pay a tax, a single bob. Then if you don't spend.
Unfortunately.
So spend on the food which you want the government to subsidize for you. Only.
30 minutes, 30 seconds rather, as we close.
You know, let's not go around with a lot of English. We cannot afford a subsidy.
Absolutely.
We have got a physical discipline. We are unable.
Physical indiscipline.
As in physical indiscipline. Yes. I actually talking about deficit. Yes. We have got a physical deficit. If we can subsidize our own food, like he said, then we don't need to subsidize it. All of us can buy it at home. We cannot afford that thing. That Fuliza model has took us down as an economy. Everything else that is going down. This country was messed 10 years ago. In the last 4 years, we've been doing a Fuliza thing. We cannot continue that way. This is a wound that we must clean. It is painful, but it's necessary. That we must tell ourselves.
Haya. Asanteni sana, gentlemen, for joining us today. And thank you for tuning in to Kenya's biggest conversation. The seats have been hot, like our husband says. Odoyo Widi is the chair of the Lake Victoria South Waterworks Development Agency. And Arnold Maliba is a public policy analyst. He vied in last year's election. So ulikuwa kwenye ballot? Ama ulikuwa kwenye ballot ya chama kwanza?
Ni kura zikutosha, ule mwenye zake zilitosha ndiye alipewa kiti.
So we can say like what the other caller said.
Yeah. But the caller is defending one person who also lost. So is this person bad? If I am bad because I lost, then Raila also is bad because he lost.